Hey, this is Scott, and today I'm going to be talking about this 300 watt Bowens mount LED light, the NiceFoto HA-3300B. So obviously this is going to have a lot of similarities to the Aperture 300D. However, I don't have one of those specifically here to test it side by side, but I will just spend some time going over this light as it is, and I will talk about some of those comparisons specs wise. But I think this is a relatively simple light, so I'm going to keep this into a 5-minute review format. I'm going to talk about the light itself, show you what it has to offer, then I'll talk about the pros, the cons, and who I think this could be a good choice for. So as I said, there are of course a lot of similarities to something like the 300D. This is also a 5600 Kelvin daylight temperature light. It's a chip-on board design, has a Bowens mount so you can use all of your favorite Bowens mount accessories, and it has, the general same form factor as you'll expect with that type of light. I said this was 300 watts, but actually it's 330 watts, which on paper at least is stronger than the Aperture 300D. Again, I don't have it here to test specifically, but I will show you some samples just to show how bright this is in terms of, camera settings and things like that. Of course, the price is going to be a big selling point here. This is a few $100s cheaper than the Aperture 300D. In terms of build quality and design, it definitely doesn't have the same, polished look that a lot of those Aperture lights do. But it's definitely not bad either. It does feel solid, and it doesn't give me any major reasons to be concerned. It's powerful. Like I said, this is on paper stronger than the Aperture 300D, so you're getting a lot of light here for a good price. Of course, you're getting a high CRI rating here, but that's pretty much standard across most of the LED lights on the market recently. I also do love that this has a Bowens mount. I have a lot of lights with Bowens mount, so that means I can use all of my accessories and I don't have to worry about spending money on new modifiers or new adapter rings. The fan noise is relatively quiet. It's definitely not silent, but it is relatively quiet compared to the amount of power that you're putting out here. To show you as an example, again, in those clips where I'm showing the power of the light in terms of brightness, I'm just gonna, let the audio from the fan speak for itself in that case, because I think that's the most practical test of if the fan noise is going to interfere with your video or not. The cables here are nice quality, and they're also pretty long, which I do appreciate. Makes it easier to use. You also do get a remote control, which can control multiple groups of lights with a pretty nice backlit digital readout. The build quality of the remote overall is not that great, but it does work very well. I suppose that this will work with more NiceFoto lights than just this one, because there are some adjustments like for color temperature, which don't affect this light specifically. While not the biggest con of this light, one thing that I did immediately notice when I took it out of the box is there's no carrying case. Of course, this is not meant to be completely a location travel kit at the moment because there is no V-mount battery power, but still I would have liked to see something to carry this light in. The second and largest point for me is, as I just mentioned, this is not at the moment battery powered. They will be making a battery power adapter for this, but I'm not sure if that will be sold separately or if it will be included with this, going on in the future. But also still there is no carry case, so it's still something you would need to get separately again if you want to make this into a more portable kit that you can bring on location with you, which I think is kind of unfortunate because this is such a powerful light. I think it will really shine most on location, and it makes it a little bit tricky to do that. And it does raise the price, which makes it a little bit less attractive in terms of the value that it presents. I like the power adapter that it comes with. It has a strap where you can hook it onto your light stand, which is also easy to unclip and clip. So if you want to loop it around somewhere, that's really easy to do. And it also has this really nice little strap on the back where you can attach this to the pole of a light stand. So if you don't have anywhere to hang it, it makes it easier to still mount it there with your light. The power adjustment also only goes in 10% increments, so you can step up from 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, but you can't have any more fine control over it than that. I know I mentioned the fan noise as a pro, but I think I have to also mention it as a negative because, as I said, it's not silent. And there's actually two fans. There's one in the light and there's one in the power adapter, and both of them are always on. It's not like they only kick in when they need it. They're always on even if you're at lowest power. So in that way, I have to mention it as a negative as well. So I think there are a lot of clear-cut pros and cons with this light. In terms of pros, you're getting a relatively decent quality, powerful, and well-priced light. But in terms of negatives, you don't get a carry case and there's no battery power, which kind of limits the ways that you can use it, at least at the moment. So if you want a lot of power, but you want to save a little bit of money that you can maybe use on things that are more practical in terms of how they affect your production, modifiers, things like that, and you're not so much concerned about the portability of the light, I think this could be definitely a good choice to at least consider. I've been enjoying it for the past couple of weeks, and because I'm in a small room indoors, I don't need the extra power for a key light, but I've been using it, just kind of bouncing it off the corner of my room using it as a kind of fill light for the entire room, which has worked very well. It's very powerful, and I can use it to get an overall brightness in the room, which I can't do with something that doesn't have quite this much power. So this is with the Aperture 120D Mark II as my key light on about 75% power in the Light Dome Mark II. I have the light itself about 1.5 or 2 meters from me, and the surface of the light dome is about 1 meter from me. So this is the NiceFoto light in exactly the same position, with exactly the same modifier as the Aperture 120D, and this is on 10%. It looks pretty bright on my screen, at least compared to the 120D when it was at 75%, which has been more than enough for me for a while. So I'm just going to use this remote here to step this up in 10% increments to show you how bright this is in this particular setup, and I'll show you the camera settings on screen so you have some idea of how bright this actually is. So now we're at 10% of the light's power. This is at 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, 60%, 70%, 80%, 90%, and 100%, which I can see is obviously overexposed here. So this is too much in this particular setup, but this would be great because this is incredibly bright. So when you need a lot of light, this is definitely going to give it to you. Also, if you're curious just how this looks without the light on at all, this is what I'd be dealing with from 0% to 10%. You might be able to hear the fan noise here, so I'm going to give you a moment of silence just to listen to if that interferes with the audio at all. So if you have any questions or comments, let me know down below and I will do my best to get back to you. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to see more in the future, and as always, thank you for watching.